everybody. How's everything going today? It's Recotopia, episode 55,
Mhm,
where we do our big recommend is going to be Strange Days
mhm.
today. Once again, welcome everybody in chat who are coming in on a Tuesday to witness us do this live on video and
Mhm,
everything.
mhm.
People on Twitch and YouTube making comments during the show. Thank you guys for coming out and watching us. How
Indeed.
you doing today, Jeremy?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Do you have any small recommends for us
I
today?
do. I do. In fact, I think we're gonna have to share the opening small
That's
recommend.
right. We have a
We have a
small
for the
recommend,
first time in the
which
show's
almost
history.
makes it a big recommend in a way.
It almost does, and it probably could be, but Chris and I both inadvertently and separately from one another, without even discussing or planning it, both watched Women Talking, um, and both wanted to recommend it today as a small recommend. Um, this movie was pretty flooring for me. I thought the acting was outstanding. Um, this is about a Mennonite community um, where the women have discovered that the men are drugging and raping them,
Mhm.
including children. The police are called, and I think 8 men are arrested. And all of the men, but one or two in the community, leave to go bail out the arrested men. And the women are alone for 2 days. And they have to spend the time trying to decide if they want to stay and do nothing, stay and fight, or leave. Um, and I don't want to tell you too much more about it because the movie is really about the discussions and the pains and personalities that come out through the discourse as they try and figure out what decision they want to land on. My wife watches a lot of documentaries, and there's a whole niche market of documentaries about communities like this. There's probably 5 or 6 documentaries just about Warren Jeffs. Um, and this movie rings very true, even though it is largely fictional. It's based on a true story, but the part that's true was the men drugging and raping and getting arrested. Um, what is fiction, and the author of the book this is based on has said the book is meant to be a reaction by fiction, which I thought was a really interesting choice of
Mm.
words.
Mhm.
And so the women talking and making this decision is largely fictionalized. But hey, a lot of movies are largely fictionalized. You can
Mhm.
still be powerfully impacted. Chris, what are your thoughts on women talking?
Uh, it's one of those where just the dialogue has so many like devastating moments in it and everything. This discussion is a serious thing because it's not just like, hey, we know we have one thing we have to do here, and we know that, we know everything that we need to know to make a decision here. um one of the one of the things that I thought was kind of amazing was they catch one person, the 12, 13-year-old girls see the one person running, and they catch that guy, and then that guy goes and points at everybody else,
Right,
and then there's a discussion as to whether that guy's even telling the truth about everybody else. So
right.
there was that initial discussion about whether to kill them and everything while they were in that barn or whatever, locked up. But all through this, you're going to be sitting there going, this is, I don't know if this is just a human nature thing or whatever. I'm like, who do I believe the most? Who's got the best argument out of all of this? I think, you know, it, you have Claire Foy plays the one character who just wants to just fight and wants
Yeah,
to, and then Jesse Buckley plays the one who's like, I think we should stay and try to work something out with them or whatever. And then Rooney Mara is kind of like in between, still trying to be kind of like convinced of all this, but they're all so good. They all have such great moments, every single one of them. And then there's a lot of people that you may not like, you may have recognized from other movies. I mean, Frances McDormand is in this, but it's kind of like she made her decision that she's going to stay immediately, so she's not
Yeah.
in this discussion all the way through. But there's a lot of other actors in here that you may have noticed before in other movies that sort of round out this whole discussion, and it's interesting the paths that they take all the way through this. It's an actual real adult discussion,
Mm.
that I don't think that we discuss any of our problems in the manner that they do, and we would benefit a lot more if we actually talked this type of stuff out. Every kind of problem that we have in society, because it gives it a multifaceted, multi-layered consideration. And that's what I enjoyed the most about it, was that it wasn't just like, all right, this is we have all the information we need. We have all the decision that we need to make, and we're going to make that right now. And if you don't do that, you're stupid. That it's
Right.
not nothing like that. So
Yeah.
I really, really, really enjoyed this movie a lot.
Yeah, and just to address a couple of comments, the the violence on screen is a bare minimum. Like, for the most part, the movie doesn't show you,
It's
um,
aftermath, yeah.
and there is frank discussion at times about the attacks, but I don't feel like the movie is going to leave you depressed. At least I was relatively uplifted. Certainly, horrible things had happened, but the movie is really trying to empower these women and let them make their own choice, and they do. And
Hmm.
anyway, I thought it was fantastic. Chris obviously agreed.
Yeah,
And yes, if the topic is enough to keep you away, I understand that completely. So,
yeah. Um, all right. I guess I'm in the awkward position of going ahead and doing my small recommend, even though I just did one.
yes.
The I've been watching on Hulu. Fleischman is in Trouble. Um,
Ah,
this show stars Jesse Eisenberg, Lizzie Kaplan, Claire Danes, and Adam Brody, for the most part, throughout the series. And it 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 focuses on Eisenberg, and the after, and sort of the what he's having to deal with when he and his wife divorce. His wife, played by Claire Danes, they divorce, and he has suddenly left with the kids with no way of being able to contact his wife. He's every time he thinks that it's time, he believes it's time for her to pick up the kids, she doesn't show up. She's hard to reach by phone. She's not answering anything. And there's even a point where he's like, maybe she's dead. I don't even know. Nobody's telling me anything. Um, but it goes through him trying to be a doctor and trying to be a father to his kids while their mom is away, and have no idea what to tell them while the mom is away. And this all is being narrated by Lizzie Kaplan, who plays his best friend from, I guess, college, and has sort of re-entered his life to talk. And it starts off like kind of like a comedy, because he's divorced, and now that he's free, quote unquote, and people and all these single women see that he's a doctor, he's like getting women like he's never gotten before. And so it's sort of a sex romp there for a second, but he's talking out his problems with Lizzie Kaplan. Lizzie Kaplan is married, has kids. How I Met Your Mother fans will be glad to see that Josh Radnor plays her husband in this. Um, and as the series goes along, you start to realize that a lot of the things that you're seeing is largely from Eisenberg and Kaplan's perspective, without Claire Danes in it. And a lot of the things that they think are happening with Claire Danes it could be true, but there could be a lot of things that they're like exaggerating and everything. And as this series goes along, it gets heavier and heavier and heavier
Mm.
about how the dealing with something as brutal as a divorce, dealing with mental health issues, dealing with Lizzie Kaplan at one point. It seems like she's all in on trying to solve his problem at the expense of her own marriage
Mm.
and everything. So there's a lot of things going on in her life as well as this goes along. And Lizzie Kaplan is so awesome. I've been in love with her since Mean Girls. That was the first time I saw her, and everything I've seen her in since, I'm just like just super dig her. And I think this is her best work yet. Claire Danes, who's not in it much because she is gone through most of this, but she
Mm.
does have flashback stuff that we get to see and everything. And then she has a tour de force episode where she is dealing with a lot of mental health issues, and it is the best Claire Danes has ever been, I believe.
Mm.
And Jesse Eisenberg is great too. I mean, one of the big themes of the show is that nobody's good, nobody's bad. There's everybody's dealing with their own things. Everybody deals with it in their own way. A lot of times people are shitty. A lot of times people are good, and you can't really like judge somebody completely based on just one perspective.
Mm.
And this is a really, really good show that I highly recommend. I was not expecting it to get as deep as it did when I first started it. And when you first started, it's like, oh, this is okay. I see what kind of show this is. And then it just really sort of it takes a deep turn. It's not, I don't wouldn't say it's like a depressing turn. It's just deep. It really makes you think about a lot of things. So there you go.
All right. Well, where is that? Is it on
It's on Hulu.
Hulu? All right.
Yeah, it's I don't know if it's see, I saw it on Hulu. I don't know if it's an FX show. I think it's an FX show, but I don't know if FX had it or if it's an FX studio thing that they just put out on Hulu. Whatever. You can find
I
it on
see.
Hulu.
All right, cool. This is mostly, I mean, the title is familiar, but this is completely off my radar. So I will have to add that to the list. My second small recommend for the day is a 2022 movie called Breaking. This stars John Boyega. This would pair nicely with the movie where Denzel holds people hostage in a hospital to get health care.
John Q.
John Q. This is about a man who is served in the military and has mental and physical issues. And from his perspective, which is the perspective we have in the movie for the most part, the VA is not paying for what they should, and he's at his wit's end. Now, from a highest bank holdup standoff movie perspective, I don't know that you're going to get a ton of surprises. This is based on a true story. This happened a few years ago. And I think for the most part, the movie goes the way the real events did. So you may want to research that before watching. The reason to watch this is twofold. This is Michael Kenneth Williams' last movie, and he plays the crisis negotiator and gives a really solid performance. And John Boyega is fucking electric. Like, I haven't felt this way about a performance since I saw Andrew Garfield in Tick, Tick, Boom. Like, he just kills it. He just nails it. He has such a range that he has to portray, and he just grips you. And even if you don't think the movie is good, I challenge you to find a problem with his performance. It is epic. Like in a better film, it's award-worthy performance for sure. So that is my recommend. Breaking from 2022.
All right. All right. I'm gonna have to check that out. Absolutely.
You can watch that on Showtime or Paramount Plus.
Okay. All right, on to the big recommend. The day's big recommend is from 1995. I seem to be all over 1995 in the show. And I don't know if I feel like because I was a movie theater projectionist for so long in the 90s and like watched everything and whatever, I've got all these hidden gems from the 90s. And I want to go through all the eras, but man, the 90s always seem to call back to me on these. I still got like a whole bunch loaded up. Anyway, 1995, Strange Days from Catherine Bigelow. Um, and this is a movie, much like how Jeremy was describing it last week, I saw in theaters, didn't really care for that much, and moved on. And then I picked it back up. I think I saw part of it later on, and I was like, whoa, this is I actually kind of like this. I think this is like pretty good. And so I recommended this one. Now I have been reading some things in Discord and on the comments before we even got to this movie, and I'm not sure how this movie hit all you. It sounds like it either was lukewarm or like you didn't like it at all. So who knows? I don't know. I don't know where we're at on this. I don't even know if Jeremy likes this movie. So so it'll be interesting to go through all of this as I wax on about it, and then maybe hear that Jeremy doesn't like it. So this movie is like I said last week, is pretty interesting because it came out in 1995, and then it feels like a distant future type of thing, and it's in 1999. It comes out. It's the future is 1999, and I think my microphone might be messed up. Hold on a second. Yeah, hold on a second. Technical difficulties, guys. I think for a second there I was going off on some on another microphone there. So sorry about that to anybody who's editing this. Anyway, so yeah, it's I think the thing is that James Cameron, who's a credited screenwriter on this and came up with the story for this movie. I think he had the idea for this, the technology of this, in the 80s. And that was where he first came up with the idea for the technology of it. And then the Rodney King incident happened around the time he was shooting Terminator 2, and that affected him enough that he decided to add some of that element into the movie. And so I don't know if it was just that in the 80s, in 1999 seems so far away that it was like in the future and they just kept it there. But we still had, even in 1995, we were still kind of like, I don't know, the 1999 seems such like a mysterious year, like, oh, it's the end of the millennium, even though of course we found out there's no year zero and it's not really the millennium.
The Numanium.
Right. I think that we were still fascinated with that, and Y2K and all that. People started talking about like what's going to happen with all the computers when it goes to Y2K? All the banks are going to fail and blah, blah, blah. Well, and that turned out to not be that big of a deal. So the technology in this is something that this little like squid thing that they put on their head, that people put on their head, that they experience things that not only records the video, but it also records the feelings and emotions of the person inside. So if you give somebody a video of this thing that you've done, that they will experience the same things you do. In the very beginning of this movie, plays a lot like what we would see found footage movies do later on with Blair Witch Project and things like that. We get to be a bird's, like not a bird's eye view. We get a POV of a bank robbery, or not a bank robbery, but a restaurant robbery, and we get to see the ensuing police chase that goes along with it. And just at the very end, the guy who has the equipment on his head tries to make this impossible jump between two buildings on a rooftop and then falls to his death. And then that's when we were introduced to our main character, Lenny Nero, played by Ray Fiennes, who pulls off the thing and says, "Hey, I don't deal in snuff films." And he's dealing with this guy who's trying to get him real street life type stuff on video for people who want to experience stuff like, you know, doing robberies and doing all sorts of like unmentionable things, probably on their recordings. And so we see that this is his life. He is going around trying to find this kind of footage to sell to people. We don't know how much he's selling this stuff for.
No.
There's a talk from the guy who plays his, like, you know, real life dealer or whatever. He wants 10. We don't know if that means $10 or if that means 10,000. No idea what that really means, but he wants 10 for it, and then he ends up getting it down to 5 because he's going to have to cut it, and people don't like cut stuff, whatever. But then you see him, he's also actively trying to find other things. He's actually staging so many things. He's got people who are like doing porn basically out there, shooting porn basically with these squid things. And so he's even like going to people and telling them what they need to do when they're doing all of this thing. So he's selling all this stuff, but then one of the people he knew from his past, named Iris, comes in and says that I've got something to show you. And just as she's about to show him this video that she's put in his car, of course his car gets towed away. And in one of those convenient make the movie longer moments, you know, she sees the cops and she doesn't like the cops. She runs away. He doesn't know exactly the video's in his car. The car gets towed, and then there's this whole thing where it's like he forgets that she said that what it was in his car, and he has to go find it in the tow place later or whatever. Introduced in the beginning of all this are all of our main characters, all of our characters that are going to end up factoring into this whole thing. His buddy Max, who he used to work with, played by Tom Sizemore. I guess they used to work Vice together. That's what I got the sense of. They both no longer do that job. Max does security for this guy named Philo, played by Michael Wincott, making another appearance here on Recotopia after Talk Radio. And of course, Tom Sizemore making another appearance after Devil in a Blue Dress just a couple of weeks ago. He does the security for a man named Philo. He's hired Max to follow around who used to be Lenny's girlfriend and now is Philo's girlfriend, played by Juliette Lewis, Faith. Faith is a wannabe like pop singer, but like a rock star. She wants to be a rock star. Philo has represented a whole bunch of different musical acts. And she thinks that she's got the best shot at being popular with him. It's unknown whether or not he's just keeping her as like, as a girlfriend, like, you know, oh yeah, I promise you'll, you know, he's using her for sex or whatever. We don't know if that's, I get the sense that's what's happening there. Like he's not really helping her career, but maybe he is. I don't know.
I mean, not to interject, but I would love to see the movie of how she goes from, you know, with Rafe and in that memory video to being with this guy. Like that is a journey I would find very interesting.
Yeah.
But I imagine drugs are probably involved.
Right. While Lenny is hustling, we run into another friend of his, a limo driver played by Angela Bassett, Lornette Mason. And they have a history where I guess he, along with somebody else, was in on an arrest of her. I don't know if it's her boyfriend or husband, Jericho 1,
right,
played by Glenn Plummer. I don't know if it was a husband or if it was a boyfriend or a baby daddy. I don't remember if they mentioned that or not, but they have a child together. And we see a flashback of Lornette coming home and yelling at Jericho 1 or at the cops as they arrest him. And then she walks in and we see Lenny like giving counseling or helping out her kid, and they sort of struck a friendship through that. By the way, and Angela Bassett also making her second appearance after the score. Um, uh, I, Angela Bassett, I don't know, probably steals this movie for me. I
Mm.
think she's as fierce as it gets, and this is why over in the past, if you've ever heard me talk about Angela Bassett and I get upset that they always put her in these roles where she would just come in and yell and
And
then
then
leave
believe.
and not be a part of the action. This is why is, you see something like Strange Days and you're like, oh, she was poorly misused for many, 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 many years.
Yep.
Um, so she's not really down with what Lenny does, but she understands what kind of a heart he has and all that. But there's a scene early on where he tries to like sell one of her customers on some stuff that he has, and she ends up kicking him out of the limo. But
She gets
uh,
so mad.
yeah, and then ends up taking him to this club later. But what we find out is that someone has sent this video, and there's a lot of things going on here. So much like Devil in a Blue Dress, I may have to jump back and forth here. But um, the first thing that we know is that there's a video that we know is highly coveted by the cops. The cops, played by Vincent D'Onofrio and William Fichtner, who I don't think says anything in this. William Fichtner may not say one word in this movie, which is weird considering this is the same year that he's in Heat. And it's like I don't know. Maybe he did this before he was like a kind of a name, but um, the cops are chasing after Iris, who we mentioned earlier on, and this video has something on it that's very important for them it has something very important for them that they need to snuff out essentially. um then we have another video that's sent to Lenny himself that shows a horrific rape, and and it's Iris in the video. Now, one of the things that I think this movie doesn't do well is time. It
Mm.
feels like weeks are going by sometimes, and it's just 2 days. It starts on December 30th and it ends on January 1st. So, like, a whole bunch of stuff happens in this where it feels like a lot more time has passed. But but because he sees Iris in this video and he's just seen Iris recently, he knows that this is something that is recently happened, and so we find out that Iris has been killed. One other thing that I thought was weird about this scene, the rape scene, I thought because Catherine Bigelow was behind the screen. I think my microphone went out again. Sorry, guys.
You're gonna have to get that thing looked at.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get to.
You're back.
All right. The thing I thought that what we were going to see was her perspective of the rape as it was happening, and because we always see the rapist's view of it, but they twist it in this really fucked up way where it's like the person perpetrating this has somehow hacked into her own little squid thing so that she feels what he feels while he's doing it to her. That's really messed up. It's
Yep.
really, really messed up. But so we know that's happened, and now Lenny is sort of like getting this idea that that's something is he might be in danger. And once he finds it, he finally gets his hands on the video that the cops have, that the cops want. We find out that the cops one time, the reason why they're so hot on this video is it's video of them killing Jericho 1. It's a traffic stop where they go off to some secluded area, and Jericho 1 is telling them that, I'm going to get my lawyers on this. This is going to be fun when we take you to court and all that. And Vincent D'Onofrio ends up shooting him. Iris was in the car at the time that this was happening, and she was wearing her little squid thing, and then she runs off and she gets away. That's the video that they're looking for. But meanwhile, there's another thing that we think is related, but isn't. And I think my God, I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on here. Let me try this one more time. Sorry. Yeah, this might happen a couple more times. I'll have to fix this later. So sorry. Sorry, everybody. Um, we think that this thing is related, and it's only semi-related. Uh, the we think that the horrific rape video and the police video are gonna have some sort of connection to this larger conspiracy, and that's what we keep hearing from Tom Sizemore all the way through it. And then we find out, of course, and spoiler alert, we find out that he's really the one who's been doing all this stuff. Now the cops obviously are still very culpable on this murder that they've committed, but but this is a complex thing where where Max has been told by Philo to follow everybody and make sure that they don't say anything. He's worried that if the video comes back to him and that somebody finds out, that he's going to find that that his artists are going to find out that he was having them followed, and that he would be ruined and all of that. So Max comes up with this huge scheme where he kills Iris, but he doesn't want to kill Faith because he's sleeping with Faith. Duh, duh, duh. And he wants to make it where Philo dies, he gets to keep Faith, and he gets to pawn the murder off on someone else, and that's how he ends up getting Lenny involved on this. So throughout the movie, Max is telling Lenny that there's this big, huge police conspiracy going on where there's death squads and all this other stuff. Now, that conspiracy isn't very far off in this movie's world, because there are tanks going through the city in this.
Yeah.
There are freaking tanks just casually going through the city in this movie. And so like there's tanks and there's like a whole bunch of just violence going on. And I think that's where the movie may pull its punch a little bit too much, maybe, is that it ends up saying it's just a couple of bad apples here and everybody else is good in all of this.
There's even like a reveler of New Year's Eve cheer, like hugging a dude in like an armor suit, like at the end when everything is all resolved. There's like a shot of like, oh, let's hug this officer here who's wearing body armor. And I thought that was a little heavy-handed.
yeah, exactly. And I feel like I'm missing a few things here and there, but that's your basic thing that's going on with this movie. I feel like I love how well this plot actually does come together. Movie's a little bit long. I probably would have cut 20 or so minutes from this. There are things that aren't totally necessary in this. But all in all, for such a complex mystery going on, I think I really like how it all comes together. It's kind of confusing because there are two different things. There's two different plots going on here. There's the plot of the cops and their video, and then there's the plot of Max and all of the things that he's doing that are sort of related to that video, but not entirely related to that video. But anyway, I've spoken enough. What do you think about this movie?
I sure as hell liked it more than I did the first time I saw it in theaters. I remember thinking it was trippy and not good. And now I would put it above. I think it's good. I enjoyed watching it. I think it has a lot of really interesting things to say. But like you said, I think it pulls a lot of its punches. And I was definitely intrigued the whole way through about the mystery. I really like the main character, Nero, in that he is not a good person, but he's not a bad guy in the sense that he's truly revolted by some of the shit he ends up watching in these memories. But he's in no way like the moral superior to most of the other characters in here. And I like a good flawed main character. The relationship between he and Angela Bassett is really, I think, the strongest thing about the movie, where they have that come to Jesus talk where she's like, you gotta give this shit up.
Mm-hmm.
Memories fade for a reason, and you're getting stuck living in this, and he doesn't even realize how much she cares about him at this point. I think he realizes it by the end of the movie. But
Mm-hmm.
it's just some really strong acting there and really good chemistry between those two, in that you really buy that their friendship goes back so far that they can both get away with talking to each other the way they do when they're arguing or mad at each other.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I will note, as of the date of this recording, Tom Sizemore is in a coma,
Mm.
um, and had a brain aneurysm. And from what I read this morning, his family is having to make a very difficult decision.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sadly, I'm not sure he's going to be with us for too much longer. But I did have a note that if you cast Tom Sizemore in your movie, I'm going to know he's the bad guy because he's Tom
Yeah.
Sizemore.
Sure.
And I think he's very Sizemore in this movie, but this is exactly what the movie needs him to be. I think the biggest issue for me is I've never been a huge Juliette Lewis fan. Um,
Yeah, that she's polarizing. There's no doubt about it.
yeah, and she's so much a part of this movie. In so many ways. One of the ways I think you could have saved time. I do think the movie's too long, but I think like there are one or two places where we watch her perform an entire song at the club.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think I think the intent there is to get us inside her head because the lyrics are somehow about what she's experienced or what have you. But I just
Mm-hmm.
kept thinking, you could give me 5 bars of this and move on and,
Yeah.
cut 10 minutes out of this movie. Um, I thought the fireworks at the end were hilariously bad looking,
Yep.
but I will blame technology of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can see the harness line when Tom Sizemore falls at the end, uh,
Ah,
which I
yes.
rewound a few different times just to marvel at, because it's mostly hidden, but there's like a few shots where you can see
Well,
it.
and not to mention the ultra convenient space that he has to land when he gets there, considering there are thousands of people down on the ground celebrating New Year's. He happens to find the one place where there's just a van to crash into and not like a whole bunch of people's heads and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, but um, yeah, getting back to some of the things that I really really enjoyed, and like talking about Angela Bassett, there are moments in this where they easily could have gone damsel in distress mode with this, and she at one point she gives the video to that police commissioner who just so happens to be really good, even though like the whole this is what my biggest problem with the movie is that it is clearly a military force in this that's not really doing any good in
Yeah.
this, but they have the one commissioner who's kind and caring and whatever, he's all about the truth and the American way or whatever you want to call it. But she gives that video to him, and then Philo's goons show up, and you think, oh, they're just going to capture her, and then Ray Fiennes is going to have to come in and save the day. No, she beats their asses,
Yes.
and and just fierce all the way through. And by the way, Nikki Cat making an appearance there as one of the
Yeah.
goons. But
Hired goons.
yeah, but no, I like I said, I just love Angela Bassett so much in this, and like I said, it's just one of those things where, uh, like you see her later in these other movies, you're like, come on, guys, you have Angela Bassett here. She's here for you. She will make this movie so amazing, and you kind of like use her in like there's a kind of a in and out role or whatever. I love the technology in this. I think it. I mean, we're not there yet where we can get we can record emotions really, or record the fact that somebody is colorblind during it or that type of thing. It just so happens to be a signifier on the on Tom Sizemore's video. I don't think we're quite there, but the apparently they had to invent some new technology to make
They
some of
did.
this stuff work. Of course they did, because James Cameron is involved. So therefore, they had to make a tiny camera for stuff like when shirts are getting pulled off over the camera and everything like that. They had to make stuff like. So I really like that. I really like the technology involved. I think this is one of those movies with maybe a little bit more time to cook, and like you projected a little bit further in the future, it comes off as a mega classic. But anyway, I'm glad that you at least liked it, not like you didn't like hate it or anything like
Right.
that. And I get the sense that a lot of the people who watched this in the comments are they basically like it, but there's some things about it that I think everybody, when they see this, is gonna. It is too long. It is, um, it does have its problems, but I felt like it was a movie worth revisiting because I don't think we talk about it really that much today. So,
Nope, I agree.
On to what do you think is a good super secret double feature for this?
Oh man, there are a lot of good contenders, I think, and obviously even Devil in a Blue Dress would be a nice double feature with this because you have sort of an amateur detective. He's an ex-detective in this movie, but
Mm-hmm.
going after this mystery, and Tom Sizemore is not trustworthy. I uh, I really wanted to go with Final Cut just because of the memory being recorded parallel, but the movies aren't similar enough, and nobody's seen Final Cut. But that is a nice, creepy Robin Williams performance if you want to take a look at it, where he cuts people's memories into a funeral presentation for their loved ones. And
Yeah, he was in an era here in that it was 2004 where it was just like he was always playing these creepy bad guy types, like he was tired of playing Robin Williams comedy genius so often. So yeah.
I really, really wanted to go with The Nice Guys. It tonally is a little too light, I think, to stack up to Strange Days. And so ultimately, I'm going with something that has already been mentioned in the chat that I do feel is rather on the nose, but so perfectly on the nose, I had to do it, and that's Minority Report.
Yes, that was the one that I was thinking.
Yeah, and I think it's too perfect to pass up because there are so many parallels with the untrustworthy friend, with the literal, MacGuffin memory that we're, visual memory that we're chasing and investigating. You have a wife that got tired of your shit and left. And it's the future. It's kind of detective-y. So yeah, I think Minority Report and Strange Days would be an excellent back-to-back double feature. So
yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, it's not actual video, but I mean, it's essentially that, with memories being recorded and everything. And so yeah, and even down to the fact that the cop is committing the murder. In there. So yeah, it's very, very close. This is a very Philip K. Dick. It seems like inspired by something he'd write. So
yeah,
anyway,
I think so.
All right. Well, we don't have any homework next week.
We do. Your homework for next week is to watch every movie from 2022.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead and do that. Yeah.
Because we will have our producer extraordinaire, Aaron Dicer, on the show with us to do our annual best of the year breakdown and discussion. That is next week's episode. Reminder, that will probably go longer than a typical Recotopia episode because we have so many movies to discuss together, and then we will have to vote and choose the best movie of 2022. And you can vote in the comments, and we probably won't count your vote, but you can count each other's votes and see which one wins. So yeah, whatever you haven't seen from 2022 that you are able to get your hands on. And I think we're going to talk about blockbusters as well as award nominees, things like that. So get your watch on, and that'll be next week's show. I think we've got plenty of time for some questions here.
We do.
If the studio movie owning editing gods granted you a shiny new high quality release of an older movie that is currently only available in DVD quality, you'd get it in the shiniest, best high quality edit available, what would you ask for?
It's interesting. I mean, this ties into James Cameron again. It's interesting that James Cameron hasn't really come out with some of his movies on 4K or even Blu-ray. And I don't think I was that big of a fan of The Abyss, but I would love to see that movie in 4K.
Mm,
And I don't think it's even hit Blu-ray, at least not in the United States. The only thing that was available that I've seen is DVD for The Abyss.
mm.
And I haven't seen The Abyss since like the theater. But I can't imagine a movie that would look more awesome in 4K than The Abyss, back at least back in this era. And so yeah, that's one that I'd love to see hit 4K.
Yeah, I wrote down arsenic and old lace, which really doesn't count because they can't change the aspect ratio that the film was shot with, but
Right.
they could. I'm assuming because it's owning editing gods in the question. I'm assuming that they can take the arsenic and old lace print and make it immaculate, even if they can't expand the aspect ratio. And that's just a movie I've seen so many times, and there's so many film artifacts, in the actual film itself. Always
I
makes me
will
sad.
say, I will say my experience with classic film in 4K is that it's obviously clean. They've made it clean. But I don't know if I've seen anything that like really hits to the next level in those things. Although I take that back. The Rear Window and Vertigo transfers for
Mm,
4K, those are phenomenal. So, but
mm.
black and white movies in general, I don't know. They're I guess they have a little bit. I saw the Citizen Kane one, and it's like, oh yeah, that's Citizen Kane, all right. It's not really like, it's not really like enhanced that much, but so I don't know. I would like any old movie that's got that old artifact type of stuff would be great to see cleaned up and like nice and bright and whatever. But yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
I should state that somebody in the comments, Nick, here is telling me that there is a Criterion and Blu-ray release of Arsenic and Old Lace, and it's actually quite good. So I'll need to check that
Okay.
out.
All right.
All right. Take a score from one movie and then name a different movie said score would also work well with. No choosing a movie with the same composer. That's cheating.
Every time that I try to have my answer ready, this thing goes off a little bit. I'm having a bad day. Guys. No. I think that Taxi Driver score would go well with The Talented Mr. Ripley. If you're talking about, especially since if you're talking about characters that have some sort of something off with them all the way through, I think that Taxi Driver score, the Bernard Herrmann, it's a lot of like saxophone. I think I don't know if it's saxophone or whatever in Taxi Driver, but that score would go well with a lot of the stuff in Talented Mr. Ripley, because Talented Mr. Ripley's got a lot of that, got a lot of the I think era specific kind of thing. I mean, Bernard Herrmann is doing I don't know, he's doing a retro-ish score in 1976 for Taxi Driver. So anyway, I just think that would go along well. Well with that. So
there are a lot of horns in the Talented Mr. Ripley score. So a lot of jazz. I think that meshes up nice. I've always loved the score from The Firm. Tom Cruise movie based on a John Grisham novel. It's entirely piano, but very driving and percussive, and very, very unique. And so in thinking about other movies that might have a similar frenetic kind of main character journey, I thought Arlington Road would be, you could probably take that piano score and and apply it to the intrigue of Arlington Road, which is a movie I'll probably have to recommend mecha rend. Let's see. What anybody in the chat have an answer for that one?
Polly Walnut says take something like the Once Upon a Time in the West and apply it to Star Wars: A New Hope. Of course, see now that when I read these, know that I'm going to guess some of them are jokes and some of them are serious. The Catch Me If You Can score to Saving Private Ryan, I'm going to guess is a joke. Road to yeah, exactly. While they're sitting there blowing heads off and stuff. Jet Smith says take Road to Perdition and put it on There Will Be Blood. Nick Jagged says Beetlejuice would oddly work with a Hudsucker Proxy. I agree with you on that one. Nice. Let's see. James says this is weird, but I feel like Daniel Hart's Plaintiff, a ghost story score, could fill out the spaces, and I'm thinking of ending things that don't use Jay Wadley's ballet score. Josh says the score for Soul by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross inserted into something like The Lovely Bones. Unfortunately, The Lovely Bones is such a trash movie.
I can't watch that movie ever again.
Yeah, Shaggy Nut says Sin City score on LA Confidential. Of course, anytime Sin City is brought up, I think joke because we've trashed that movie so much.
He's just
yeah. Is that Slab? That's Shaggy. It's Shaggy Nuts that says that. Oh, but then Slab does say Sin City score with every.
Sorry, I read the wrong name first.
All right, we have one more. Maybe we
got one more. We're going to end a little early today, but that's okay. Everybody can get to lunch. What is your favorite? Actually, the question literally says favorite movie pet ? So you remember to use your words, folks.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great movie pets, but I'm gonna just go with a standard here. Einstein from Back to the Future. Just such a sweet dog, and and because I watched Back to the Future so much, I always loved it when he gets 1 minute into the future and they open up the door and he's sitting there with the seatbelt on and everything, and he's just so happy to see Doc when he opens the door and everything. And of course, he warns them about the Libyans when he's in the trailer. Somehow knows that they're coming. Yeah, I love me some Einstein. So
I also went with a dog, two dogs. I chose two different ones because I can. And from a movie that may have actually inspired DoesTheDogDie.com, I Am Legend.
Oh, yeah.
I love that German Shepherd, and I'm mad that they chose to kill the dog in that movie. Spoiler alert. And if there's a dog in this sequel they make, I'm going to be wary. I'm going to be wary. But I enjoy that movie, I think, more than most, and that dog is awesome for the first half. And then The Dog and Prey is my new favorite good boy. Even though hilariously in real life that dog was impossible to control, but on film he looks like the smartest dog that ever lived. And I think both we all pick dogs. I see a comment, did we all pick dogs?
It says let's see, Polly Walnut says 0 from Nightmare Before Christmas.
Nice.
Nick Jagged says Stitch from Lilo and Stitch, but isn't Stitch just like an alien being? I guess he's
have an alien pet.
I guess that's okay. Slab Bulkhead says Halle Berry's dogs from John Wick. Yeah, they're awesome.
Oh yeah.
James says the giant dog Bruno from the Triplets of Belleville. Man, I haven't seen the Triplets of Belleville in forever. Need to revisit that one. And then Josh, as a joke, says Channing Tatum as Danny McBride's pet from This Is the End. DPW says Speck and Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure. And the Jetsmith says the cat in the lap at the start of The Godfather. Sure, yeah, he's a good little cat. DPW says Steve Martin's dog in The Jerk, and Castro says the dog in Toy Story 2 has a fun bit. So
nice.
There you go. I think we all picked dogs except for the one cat in The Godfather. And so nobody picked a parakeet, nobody picked a hamster or gerbil, but
nope.
That's what you're living in a dog's world, guys.
Yep.
Living in a dog's world. Next week, best of 2022 with Aaron Dicer in tow. And so we will be doing that next week. Once again, thank you, chat, for coming in and watching us today. You make our show better, and I'm happy that you came along. But that's going to do it for this episode. We'll see you next time.
Bye,
See ya.
everybody.
Bye.